He dumped me while pregnant for his mistress. 30 years later, he invited me to his wedding to mock my poverty. The Rolls-Royce pulled up. I stepped out, followed by the triplets he rejected. The groom went pale at the altar. What Raymond didn't know was that his nightmare was just beginning. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in April. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, the kind of pretentious design that screamed money. Raymond Foster and Jennifer Lawson request the pleasure of your company at their wedding celebration. I almost threw it away. Almost. But then I read the handwritten note on the back. Carol, I hope you'll come. I want you to see how well things turned out for me. Maybe it will inspire you to do something with your life. Ray. The audacity. The absolute audacity. I called my eldest son, Alexander. He answered on the first ring, the way he always did when my number came up. Mom, everything okay? Your father invited me to his wedding. Silence. Then, he did what? There's a note. He wants me to see how well things turned out for him. That son of a... Alex stopped himself. 30 years old, CEO of one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the country, and he still tried not to curse in front of his mother. What do you want to do? And I want you and your brothers to come with me. Another pause. I could hear Alex processing, the same way he processed business deals. He was the planner, the strategist. William handled the finances. Daniel was the people person. Together, they'd built Bennett Capital into a $2.8 billion firm in less than 8 years. Raymond didn't know any of this. Raymond had walked out of my life when I was 3 months pregnant with triplets and had never looked back. When's the wedding? 3 weeks. June 12th, the country club in Rochester. I'll talk to Will and Dan. We'll figure something out. I hung up and looked at the invitation again. The gold letters, the fancy venue, the absolute certainty in Raymond's note that I was still the broke, abandoned woman he'd left behind. 30 years ago, I was 22 years old, working as a secretary at a small accounting firm, dating a charming man named Raymond Foster who promised me the world. When I told him I was pregnant, his face went blank. Not surprised, not happy, not even angry, just blank. I'm seeing someone else, he said. Her name is Vanessa. She's everything you're not. Ray, I'm having your baby. Then don't, or do. It's your choice, but I won't be part of it. He walked out that night, left me with an apartment I couldn't afford, a job that barely paid minimum wage, and 3 babies growing inside me that I didn't even know about yet. The ultrasound at 4 months revealed the triplets. The doctor asked if I wanted to consider my options. I told her I'd consider my own options, thank you very much. My mother helped me through the pregnancy. She'd been a single mother herself, understood what I was facing. When the boys were born, Alexander, William, and Daniel, named after my grandfather and his brothers, she moved in with me. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment, 4 humans and exactly 0 money, surviving on formula samples and hand-me-down clothes. Those first years were the hardest of my life. I worked days at the accounting firm, nights at a call center, weekends at a grocery store. My mother watched the boys. We never asked Raymond for anything. I'd rather have starved than begged him for child support. Somehow, we made it. I went back to school when the boys were 5. Community college at first, then a transfer to the state university, accounting degree, CPA license, a job at a bigger firm, then a bigger one, then my own practice. The boys grew up watching me work. They learned what sacrifice looked like, what determination meant. By the time they went to college, all 3 on scholarships, all 3 in finance, they had a fire in them that couldn't be extinguished. We're going to build something, Mom, Alex told me the day he graduated. Something big, something that proves you didn't sacrifice for nothing. He wasn't exaggerating. Bennett Capital started in a rented office above a pizza shop. 3 brothers, 3 computers, 0 clients. Within a year, they'd made their first $1 million. Within 5, they'd made their first $100 million. Within 8, they were managing nearly $3 billion for investors around the world. I retired from my own practice when I turned 50. The boys insisted, "Let us take care of you now," Will said. "You've done enough." I still didn't know how to let people take care of me, but I was learning. The house they bought me was modest by their standards, extravagant by mine. A 4-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood, paid for in cash. A Rolls-Royce in the garage that I almost never drove. Investments that generated more interest monthly than I'd earned in entire years of my youth. But I never flaunted it. Never announced it. I'd learned long ago that real wealth didn't need to advertise itself, which is why Raymond didn't know. I'd seen him occasionally over the decades, at a restaurant once, at a grocery store another time. He'd looked right through me, the way you look through people you've erased from your memory. The mistress, Vanessa, had lasted about 2 years. Then there was another woman. Then another. Raymond had been married 3 times since leaving me, each marriage shorter than the last. Now he was trying again with Jennifer, whoever she was, and for some reason, he'd decided to invite me. "It's a power move," Dan said when the boys came over for dinner that night. He was the youngest triplet by 4 minutes, the one who understood people best. "He wants to parade his success in front of you, show you what you missed out on. He wants to hurt you," Will added. He was the quieter one, the numbers guy. "He's always been petty. This is just another version of that." Alex was studying the invitation like it was a business prospectus. "What's his current situation? Financially, I mean?" "I don't know. I haven't kept track." "Let me look into it." Alex pulled out his phone, started typing. "I have people who can find out." "Is that necessary?" All 3 sons looked at me. "Mom," Alex said slowly, "this man abandoned you while you were pregnant with us. He's never paid $1 of child support. He's never acknowledged our existence. And now he's inviting you to his wedding to mock you. It's necessary." The report came back in 48 hours. Raymond Foster had made money in real estate during the boom years, lost most of it in the crash, rebuilt slowly, mostly through connections and luck rather than skill. His current net worth was about $4 million, enough to seem wealthy to most people, but nothing compared to what my sons had built. More interesting was his current business situation. He was trying to launch a new development project in Rochester. Big mixed-use complex, condos and retail. He needed investors. "He's been shopping it around for 6 months," Alex reported. "No takers. The numbers don't work. The location is wrong. It's a vanity project." "Why does that matter?" Alex smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Because we just became his investors. Anonymous ones." "What are you planning?" "We're planning to give Raymond Foster exactly what he deserves. A front row seat to everything he walked away from." I looked at my sons. 3 brilliant men who had built an empire from nothing. 3 men who had every reason to hate the father who abandoned them, but who had channeled that pain into creation instead of destruction. "Whatever you're planning," I said, "I want to be there." "You will be, Mom." Alex set down the invitation. "You'll be front and center." The plan came together over the next 3 weeks. Investments were made through shell companies. Documents were signed. By the morning of June 12th, Bennett Capital, through a series of carefully structured holding companies, owned controlling interest in Raymond Foster's development project. He didn't know who his new investors were. He only knew that someone had finally agreed to fund his dream. What he didn't know was that his new bosses were his own sons, the triplets he'd rejected 30 years ago, the boys he'd never bothered to meet, to know, to love. And what he really didn't know was that we were all coming to his wedding. "Ready?" Alex asked me that morning. I looked in the mirror. 52 years old, silver in my hair, lines around my eyes, but strong, healthy, successful in ways Raymond couldn't imagine. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the country club at exactly 2 p.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 2:30, plenty of time for an entrance. The driver opened the door. I stepped out first, wearing a simple navy dress that cost more than Raymond's first car. Then Alex, in a charcoal suit that screamed power. Then Will. Then Dan. 3 identical faces, 30 years old, looking exactly like their father had looked when he'd walked out on me. The guests on the lawn turned to stare. I saw confusion, recognition. Someone whispered, "Is that the Bennetts? The Bennett Capital Bennetts?" I didn't answer. Just walked toward the ceremony area, my sons flanking me, the Rolls-Royce gleaming behind us. Raymond was standing at the altar. He saw the car first, then me, Then his face went white. But the real shock came when he saw the boys. 3 identical men. His eyes, his jaw, his build. Alex walked up the steps to the altar, straightened his tie, leaned in close to his father. "Hello, Dad," he whispered. "We need to talk about your investors." Raymond's face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, denial, more fear, and finally something that looked like panic, barely contained. "Who?" His voice cracked. "Who are you?" "We're your sons, Raymond. The triplets you walked out on 30 years ago. The ones you told Mom to deal with because you'd found someone better." Alex's smile never wavered. "We turned out okay. No thanks to you." The guests were murmuring now. Jennifer, the bride, was standing at the other end of the aisle, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. She'd been told something about Raymond's past, presumably. But not this. "This is insane." Raymond tried to regain his composure. "You can't just show up here and we were invited." I stepped forward, holding the invitation. "You wanted me to see how well things turned out for you. Well, I'm here. And I brought our boys. Carol." Raymond said my name like it tasted bad. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing." "No game. Just a family reunion." I looked around at the assembled guests. Wealthy people, mostly. Business associates. Country club members. The kind of audience Raymond had cultivated his entire life. "Though I suppose this is the first time you've met your children. That must feel strange." "I don't have children." 3 of them are standing right in front of you." Will spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, measured, the voice he used in boardrooms. "DNA would confirm it if you're curious. Not that we need your acknowledgement. We stopped needing anything from you a long time ago." The minister was looking between Raymond and us, clearly unsure what to do. Jennifer had started walking down the aisle, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Raymond, what is going on?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Some kind of scam. These people are the Bennett family." One of the guests had stepped forward, an older man in an expensive suit. I recognized him from business magazines. Martin Caldwell, real estate developer. Nancy Price's son, Alex, runs Bennett Capital. They're one of the biggest private equity firms on the East Coast. Raymond's face went even paler. "Bennett Capital?" "Yes." Alex's smile broadened. "We've actually met recently, Dad. Sort of. Through your development project, the Riverside Complex. My investors, your new bosses. As of this morning, Bennett Capital owns controlling interest in Foster Development LLC. We're your majority shareholders." Alex straightened his cufflinks. "Surprise." The wedding guests had gone completely silent. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. Everyone was watching the drama unfold at the altar like it was a particularly compelling television show. Jennifer grabbed Raymond's arm. "You told me the investors were from New York, some anonymous fund." "They were. I didn't know." "You didn't know that your abandoned children had become billionaires? That they were watching you? That they were coming for you?" "I didn't abandon them. I left Carol. That's not the same thing." "It's exactly the same thing." Dan's voice was sharper than his brother's. He'd always been the one who felt things most deeply. "You left when she was pregnant. You told her to deal with it. You never sent $1, never made a phone call, never acknowledged we existed. For 30 years, we were nothing to you. Well, now we're something, and you have to deal with us." Raymond looked around wildly, searching for an escape. There wasn't one. "Can we discuss this inside? Please? This is my wedding." "Your 4th wedding," I said. "Vanessa lasted 2 years, then Patricia for 3, then Deborah for 4. You have a pattern, Raymond, and from what I hear, Jennifer already has 1 foot out the door." Jennifer's grip on Raymond's arm loosened. "How do you know about that?" "We do our research." Will pulled out his phone. "We know about the prenup you're insisting on. The separate finances. The fact that you told your sister last week that you're not sure you're making the right choice. That was a private conversation. Nothing's private in the age of technology, especially when you're about to marry a man with 3 billionaire sons he's never mentioned." Raymond was sweating now, dark patches forming under his arms, visible even in his expensive suit. "Jennifer, listen to me. Whatever they're saying. They're saying you abandoned 3 children and never told me about it. They're saying those children grew up to run one of the most successful investment firms in the country. They're saying they now own your company. Jennifer pulled her hand away. What am I supposed to do with that information, Raymond? It's not complicated at all. Alex stepped closer to his father, close enough that only Raymond could hear what he said next. I didn't know what it was. I only saw Raymond's face go from pale to gray. Fine, Raymond said loudly. Fine. You want to do this here, in front of everyone? Let's do it. He turned to the assembled guests. These people are trying to humiliate me. Yes, I left Carol 30 years ago. It was a mistake. I was young and stupid. But I didn't know about the triplets until it was too late, and by then what? I interrupted. I sent you a letter when they were born, with photos. I sent you letters every year for the first 5 years. You never responded. I never received any letters. You received them. Will again, phone in hand. We found the delivery confirmations, signed by R. Foster. You just didn't care enough to respond. Raymond's lies were falling apart in real time. The guests were shifting uncomfortably, some already heading toward the exits. A wedding that had been meant to display Raymond's success was turning into a public exposure of his failures. What do you want? Raymond finally asked. His voice was different now, defeated. Money? An apology? What? We don't want your money. Alex laughed. We have plenty of our own. What we want is something much simpler. We want you to know what you lost. Alex gestured at his brothers. 3 sons. A life you could have been part of. We graduated from top universities. We built $1 billion company. We take care of our mother the way you never did. And you missed all of it. Because you decided Vanessa was everything Carol wasn't. You made a choice. Every day for 30 years, you chose not to be in our lives. You chose not to reach out, not to apologize, not to try. And now you have to live with that choice. Jennifer had taken off her engagement ring. She set it on the altar table with a small clink. I can't do this, she said quietly. I can't marry someone who could walk away from his own children and never look back. The wedding is off, Raymond. She turned and walked down the aisle, past the stunned guests, out the door. Raymond stood alone at the altar. No bride, no dignity, just the weight of 30 years of choices crashing down on him at once. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Something closer to pity. Raymond Foster had spent his whole life running from responsibility, running from me, running from his sons, and now, in front of everyone who mattered to him, he had nowhere left to run. We should go, I said quietly to my sons. Not yet. Alex was still watching his father. There's one more thing. He walked back to Raymond, who was standing frozen at the altar like a man in a dream. The Riverside Development Project, Alex said. Our analysts have reviewed it. The numbers don't work. The location is wrong. It's a bad investment. You're going to pull the funding. We're going to restructure. Cut the residential component, expand the commercial space, partner with local businesses instead of chain retailers. It might actually work that way. Alex paused. We're also installing new management, someone who knows what they're doing. You're firing me from my own company. We're offering you a consulting position, 20% of what you were paying yourself. If you don't like it, you can walk away. Like you're so good at doing. Raymond's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like what he was. A 54-year-old man who had spent his life making bad choices and was finally running out of chances. Why? He whispered. Why go through all of this? Because you invited Mom to your wedding to mock her. Because you thought she was still poor, still broken, still the woman you left behind. Alex looked at me. She's not. She's the strongest person I know. And she raised us to be strong, too. I stepped forward, stood next to my sons, looked at the man who had once made me feel worthless. Goodbye, Raymond. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. We walked out together. 4 people who had built something from nothing, leaving behind a man who had taken everything for granted and lost it all. Outside, the Rolls-Royce was waiting. The driver opened the door. "That was intense," Dan said as we drove away. "Are you okay, Mom?" I thought about it. About the boy I'd loved at 22. About the man who'd abandoned me. About the 30 years of struggle and triumph that had led to this moment. "I'm okay," I said. "I think I've been waiting to say that for a very long time." The news spread faster than I expected. By the time we got home, 3 different journalists had already called Alex's office asking for comment. Billionaire Triplets' crash father's wedding was apparently too good a story to ignore. "We're not commenting," Alex told each of them. "It was a private family matter." But nothing stays private for long when you're worth billions. Within a week, the story was everywhere. Business magazines ran profiles of Bennett Capital. Lifestyle sites published think pieces about absent fathers and successful children. One tabloid dug up old photos of Raymond and me together, ran them next to current shots of my sons in their boardroom. I stayed out of all of it. Let the boys handle the press. I'd done what I came to do. I'd shown Raymond exactly what he'd walked away from. Now I just wanted peace. But Raymond wasn't finished. He called Will's office 2 weeks after the wedding, asked for a meeting. "Professional," he said. "About the restructuring." Will agreed, mostly out of curiosity. "He looked terrible," Will reported afterward. "Like he hadn't slept in days. Jennifer definitely left him. He's alone in that big house, rattling around like a ghost." To understand how we did it, how 3 kids from nothing built something bigger than he ever imagined. "What did you tell him?" I told him the truth. Mom worked 3 jobs when we were little. She put herself through school. She taught us that success comes from sacrifice, not shortcuts. Will paused. He didn't like hearing that. "He asked about you, whether you were happy." I considered the question. Was I happy? I had money, health, 3 successful sons who loved me. But there was something else too. Something that had been building since the wedding. "I think I'm getting there," I said. The restructuring of Raymond's company proceeded as planned. New management took over. The development project was redesigned. Within 6 months, it was showing actual promise instead of just Raymond's wishful thinking. He stayed on as a consultant, showed up to meetings, nodded along to decisions he had no power to change. The humiliation must have been constant, but he endured it. He had nowhere else to go. I saw him once during this period. Not planned. I was having lunch at a restaurant downtown, and he walked in with a business associate. He saw me, hesitated, then walked over. "I've been wanting to talk to you," away from the boys. He stood there, awkward in a way I'd never seen from him. The confident man who had walked out on me 30 years ago seemed like a distant memory. "I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, walking out when you were pregnant, not being part of the boys' lives. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know that I understand now, what I lost." I set down my fork, looked at this man who had once been everything to me, then nothing at all. "What exactly do you think you lost, Raymond?" "My sons, their childhood, watching them grow up. All those years I could have been there. You didn't want to be there. That's the part you keep forgetting. I was stupid, selfish. I thought I deserved better than a secretary with a cheap apartment and a surprise pregnancy that didn't fit your plans." Yes, he had the grace to look ashamed, but I was wrong about all of it. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too blind to see it." I thought about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the years of working until my feet bled, the way I'd taught myself to be both mother and father because there was no one else. "It's too late for this, Raymond." I know, but I had to say it. I had to try. Try what? To make yourself feel better? To ease your guilt? To apologize, genuinely, without excuses. I stood up, left money on the table for my bill, looked at Raymond one last time. "You want to know the truth? I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, for mine. Carrying that anger was too heavy. I let it go so I could move forward. But forgiving isn't the same as forgetting. And it definitely isn't the same as reconciling. You made your choice 30 years ago. Now you have to live with it." I walked out of the restaurant. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. That night, I told the boys about the encounter. Alex's jaw tightened. Will looked thoughtful. Dan was the one who spoke. Do you think he means it? The apology? I think he means that he regrets what he lost. That's not quite the same thing as being sorry for what he did. What's the difference? He's sorry because his life turned out worse than ours. If he'd succeeded and we'd failed, do you think he'd be apologizing? Do you think he'd even remember our names? The question hung in the air. We all knew the answer. What happens now? Dan asked. With the company? With him? That's up to you three. He's your father, regardless of what he did or didn't do. Whatever you decide, I'll support it. Alex and Will exchanged looks. Some kind of silent communication that came from sharing a womb, from growing up together, from building an empire side by side. We restructure the company, Alex said finally. Make it actually profitable, and then we sell his stake back to him, at cost. You're giving him a second chance? We're giving him an opportunity. What he does with it is up to him. Alex shrugged. Maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe he won't. But we're not going to spend the rest of our lives punishing someone who's already beaten. I looked at my sons. 3 men who had every right to be bitter, to be vengeful, to destroy the man who had abandoned them. Instead, they were choosing something harder, something better. You boys turned out okay, I said. We had a good teacher. The next few months were quiet. The company restructuring proceeded. Raymond accepted the buyback offer, took his stake, and stepped away from the business entirely. The last I heard, he was living in Florida, alone, trying to start over at 55. I didn't follow his progress, didn't care to. My life had become wonderfully ordinary. Sunday dinners with the boys, walks in the park, books I'd always meant to read, the small pleasures I'd never had time for when I was working 3 jobs and raising triplets alone. One day in October, Alex called with news. We're being featured in Forbes, the Bennett brothers story. They want to interview all of us, including you. Because you're part of the story, Mom, the most important part. We wouldn't exist without you. None of this would exist without you. I thought about it, the version of me that had hidden for decades, that had avoided attention, that had built quietly in the shadows. Maybe it was time to step into the light. Okay, I said. Tell them I'll do it. The interview took place at our home. The journalist was professional, thorough, and clearly fascinated by the story. Abandoned single mother raises triplets alone. Triplets grow up to build billion-dollar empire. Father resurfaces, gets confronted at his own wedding. It sounds like a movie, she said. It felt like one sometimes, but mostly it felt like work. Just constant, endless work. Do you have any regrets? I considered the question, the years of struggle, the loneliness, the moments when I'd wanted to give up but couldn't because 3 small boys were depending on me. I regret that my sons didn't have a father. Every child deserves that. But I don't regret how they turned out. I don't regret who they became. And Raymond Foster? Any regrets there? Raymond made his choices. I made mine. 30 years later, the results speak for themselves. The article came out in November. The mother behind the Bennett billions. It told our story with respect and accuracy. The photos showed me with my sons in their office at our family dinners. A woman who had built something remarkable out of nothing. Raymond sent a letter after the article came out. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope. I didn't open it. Some chapters are meant to stay closed. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks. Every morning, I'd see it. Raymond's handwriting. The Florida postmark. Whatever apology or explanation or plea he'd decided to write. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. Whatever he had to say, it wouldn't change anything. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the envelope on a Sunday morning in December. The boys were coming for brunch later. I wanted to deal with whatever Raymond had written before they arrived. I saw the Forbes article. The photos of you with our sons. You looked happy. They looked successful. Everything I always wanted to be and never was. I'm writing to ask for something I have no right to ask. I want to meet them, not as a father. I lost that right a long time ago, just as a person who made terrible mistakes and wants to understand what he missed. I know you probably won't respond. I know they probably won't want to see me, but I had to try. I've spent the last 6 months in Florida, alone, thinking about everything I did wrong. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that my biggest mistake wasn't leaving you. It was convincing myself that I was justified. I wasn't. I know that now. I was a coward who ran from responsibility. I told myself you would be fine, that the babies would be fine, that my absence wouldn't matter. I lied to myself because the truth was too hard to face. The truth is that I abandoned my own children. I abandoned the woman who loved me. And I spent 30 years pretending it never happened. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm just asking for a chance to say I'm sorry. In person. To them. If the answer is no, I'll understand. But I had to ask. I read the letter 3 times. The handwriting was shaky. The words were simple. No elaborate justifications. No blame shifting. Just apology. Was it genuine? I couldn't tell. Raymond had always been good at telling people what they wanted to hear. That was how he'd charmed me at 22. How he'd charmed Vanessa and Patricia and Deborah and Jennifer. But something felt different about this letter. Maybe it was the shaky handwriting. Maybe it was the simplicity. Maybe it was just that enough time had passed for him to see himself clearly. I showed the letter to the boys when they arrived. Alex read it first, passed it to Will. Will passed it to Dan. They sat in silence for a long moment. "What do you think?" Dan asked. "I think he sounds desperate," Will said. "Alone in Florida, facing the end of his life, realizing he has nothing." "That's probably true," Alex agreed. "But does that make the apology less valid? It might make it more manipulative. Meet me because I'm sad and lonely isn't the same as meet me because I've genuinely changed." I listened to my son's debate. 3 brilliant men, analyzing their father's letter like it was a business proposal, looking for angles, calculating risks. "What do you want to do?" I asked. They looked at each other. That silent communication again. "We'll meet him," Alex said finally. "Once, to hear what he has to say. Because we're not him. We don't run from hard things. We face them." The meeting happened in January. I wasn't there. The boys insisted on handling it themselves. "This is between us and him," Alex said. "You've done enough." They flew to Florida on a Tuesday. Met Raymond at a neutral location. A hotel lobby, I learned later. Public enough to be safe, private enough for real conversation. When they came back, I didn't ask what happened. Just made dinner and waited for them to share. It was Dan who finally spoke. He cried. The whole time. Couldn't even finish sentences. Just broke down. That he was sorry. That he'd wasted his life chasing things that didn't matter. That we were the only real thing he'd ever created. And he'd walked away from us. "Did you believe him?" Dan considered. "I believed that he believes it. Whether that's the same as it being true. I don't know. Nothing." Alex's voice was firm. "We gave him what he asked for. A chance to apologize. He took it. That's the end of it. You're not going to see him again? There's nothing to build on, Mom. He's a stranger who shares our DNA. Meeting him once was closure. More than that would just be pretending we're something we're not." I understood. The boys had built their lives without Raymond. They didn't need him now. What they'd given him wasn't a relationship. It was permission to stop haunting them. The weeks after the Florida meeting were strange. I kept waiting for something to happen. For Raymond to reach out again. For the boys to change their minds. For some dramatic resolution that would tie everything up neatly. Life continued. Bennett Capital announced a new fund. Will got engaged to his longtime girlfriend. Dan bought a house in the suburbs. Alex was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine. And Raymond stayed in Florida, alone, living whatever life he'd built for himself out of the wreckage of his choices. I thought about him sometimes. Not with anger, not with pity, just with a kind of distant curiosity about the person he'd become. He'd wanted to be rich and successful. He'd achieved it, for a while. Then he'd lost it. Now he was an old man in Florida, watching his sons succeed from a distance. Was he happy? Probably not. Was he at peace? I doubted it. Raymond had spent his whole life chasing external validation, wealth, status, beautiful women. When those things disappeared, what was left? But that wasn't my problem anymore. It had stopped being my problem the night he walked out. One evening in March, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when my phone rang. Unknown number. Florida area code. Carol? Raymond's voice was weak, older than I remembered. I just wanted to say thank you for letting the boys meet me. It meant more than you know. They made that decision themselves. I know, but you could have stopped them. You could have poisoned them against me. You never did. They didn't need to be poisoned against you. They just needed to know the truth. Silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. I'm sick, he said finally. Cancer. The doctors say maybe 6 months. I felt something shift in my chest. Not grief exactly. Something more complicated. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not telling you because I want sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I'm facing it. Whatever comes next. I'm not running anymore. That's good, Raymond. I just wish... His voice broke. I just wish I'd figured it out sooner. All of it. What matters? What doesn't? I wasted so much time. We all have regrets. Not like mine. Not like walking away from 3 children who grew up to be remarkable men. They're remarkable because of who they are. Not because of you or me. Maybe. But they got their strength from you. I can see it in them. That determination. That refusal to give up. That's all you, Carol. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. I'm going to stop bothering you now, Raymond said. I just wanted you to know, in case you ever wondered what happened to me. Take care of yourself, Raymond. Too late for that? A small, sad laugh. But thank you for everything. For raising them. For making them who they are. For not letting my failures become their failures. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on the porch for a long time after that. The sunset had faded. Stars were appearing. Somewhere in Florida, the man who had once been my whole world was facing his own mortality alone. I didn't feel sorry for him. He'd made his choices. But I didn't feel satisfied either. Revenge was supposed to feel like victory. Instead, it just felt like completion. The end of a story that had started 30 years ago with a broken heart and an impossible choice. I'd survived. I'd built something. I'd raised 3 remarkable sons, and Raymond was dying alone. That was the ending. Not the one I'd imagined at 22. Not the one I'd dreamed of during those long nights of exhaustion and despair. But maybe it was the right one. Maybe some stories don't have heroes and villains. Just people making choices, living with consequences, trying to make sense of the mess we call life. I went inside, called Alex, told him about his father's diagnosis. Should we go see him? Dan asked, when they were all on the line. The silence stretched long. 3 sons, deciding the fate of the father who'd abandoned them. No, Alex said finally. We gave him what he asked for. 1 meeting, 1 goodbye. Anything more would just be pretending. We're sure, Mom. We have you. That's enough. That's always been enough. I hung up and went to bed, slept deeper than I had in months. The past was finally, truly, behind me. Raymond died on a Thursday in July. The hospice called Alex first. He was listed as emergency contact, a detail Raymond must have arranged before the end. Then Alex called me. He's gone, was all he said. His voice was flat, neither sad nor relieved, just stating a fact. I don't know. We barely knew him. He was just a shape in the background of our lives. Now the shape is gone. Are you going to the funeral? There isn't going to be one. He didn't want one. His lawyer called right after the hospice. Raymond left specific instructions. Cremation, no service, no announcement. That sounds like him, avoiding anything that might force people to show up and pretend. There's something else. He left us something. Everything. His entire estate. Split equally between me, Will, and Dan. About $2 million after debts. He had that much left? Barely. The Florida house is mortgaged. There's some savings, a few investments. It's nothing compared to what we have, but it means something. Does it? Or is it just guilt money? His last attempt to buy forgiveness? That's not for me to say. What are you going to do with it? Alex was quiet for a moment. We're going to donate it to a charity for single mothers. Anonymous. In your name. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Not for Raymond. For my sons. For the men they'd become despite everything. That's perfect. We thought you'd approve. The donation was made quietly. No announcement. No press release. Just $2 million transferred to an organization that helped women like the one I'd been 30 years ago. Women alone, pregnant, abandoned, trying to survive. Raymond's final gift, transformed into something meaningful. The only good thing he'd ever done for his children, and he wasn't even around to take credit for it. Summer faded into fall. Life continued. Will got married in September, a beautiful ceremony on the coast. His wife, Elena, was a pediatric surgeon, smart, kind, exactly the kind of partner my son deserved. "I'm proud of you," I told him at the reception. "Of all of you. We're proud of you too, Mom. Everything we have, everything we are. It started with you." Dan's girlfriend announced her pregnancy in October. The first grandchild, a new generation of Bennetts. I cried when he told me, and I wasn't ashamed of it. Alex remained focused on the company, but I noticed him dating more, taking weekends off, learning that success wasn't just about numbers. "You're changing," I told him one Sunday at brunch. "We all change. That's the point." He thought about it, meeting him, seeing who he was at the end, this empty man with nothing but regrets. I realized I didn't want to be like him. I didn't want to spend my life chasing things that don't matter. You were never going to be like him, maybe. But meeting him made it concrete. Made me see what the wrong choices look like at the end of the road. I understood. Raymond's life, his failures, his loneliness, his death, had served a purpose after all. A cautionary tale. A reminder of what happened when you prioritized the wrong things. The holidays that year were the best I could remember. All 3 boys at my house. Elena and Dan's girlfriend, now fiancé. Plans for the baby. Laughter and chaos and the smell of roast turkey filling every room. This was what I'd worked for. This was what the 3 jobs and the night classes and the endless exhaustion had been about. Not money, not revenge, just this. Family gathered around a table, full of love. After dinner, when the others had scattered to various rooms, Alex found me on the porch. "Can I ask you something? Do you think he was happy?" At the end, I thought about Raymond. The shaky letter, the tearful phone call, the quiet death in a hospice with only paid strangers nearby. I don't think he knew how to be happy. He spent his whole life wanting things. More money, more status, more admiration. He never learned to want what he had. But it was his choice. He could have stayed, could have been part of our lives, could have learned to want what was right in front of him. He chose differently. Do you regret it? The wedding? Showing up like that? I considered the question. The Rolls-Royce, the business card, the look on Raymond's face when he recognized his sons. He needed to know what he'd lost, and we needed to show him. It closed a door. Doors need to be closed before you can walk through new ones. Alex nodded slowly. He understood. We sat together in comfortable silence, looking at the stars. The same stars I'd looked at 30 years ago, alone and pregnant and terrified. The same stars that had watched me work and struggle and build. I was 53 now, mother of 3 billionaires, grandmother-to-be, survivor of something that should have destroyed me but didn't. "Mom?" Alex's voice was quiet. "Thank you. For not giving up. For not letting what he did break you. For showing us what strength looks like. I didn't do anything special. I just kept going. That's the special part. Most people give up. You didn't. And because you didn't, we're here. All of this is here." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You and your brothers are the reason I kept going. You were always the reason." We went inside after that, joined the noise and warmth of family, left Raymond's ghost outside in the cold where it belonged. He'd invited me to his wedding to mock my poverty. Instead, I'd shown him exactly what he'd walked away from. 3 sons worth more than anything he'd ever achieved. A life built on love instead of ambition. A legacy that would outlast any fortune. The Rolls-Royce was just a car. The money was just numbers. The real wealth was in that house, laughing and eating and planning for the future. Raymond never understood that. He died without understanding it. But I did. I understood it every single day. And that was the difference between us. Not money, not success. Just the simple knowledge that some things matter, and everything else is just noise. The triplets he rejected had become his bosses, yes. But more importantly, they'd become good men. That was my real victory. That was the only victory that mattered. 1 year after Raymond's death, I stood in front of a crowd of 500 women, single mothers, survivors, fighters. The charity we'd funded with Raymond's estate had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as an anonymous donation had become a movement. Women helping women, stories shared, resources provided, hope kindled, and now they'd asked me to speak. "My name is Carol Bennett," I said, my voice steady. 31 years ago, I was exactly where many of you are now, alone, pregnant, abandoned by a man who was supposed to love me. The audience was silent, 500 faces, each with their own story. I had nothing, a minimum wage job, an apartment I couldn't afford, and 3 babies growing inside me that I didn't even know about yet. Murmurs of recognition, nods of understanding. The man who left me thought he was moving on to something better. He thought I was worthless, that our children would be worthless. He never sent money, never called, never acknowledged we existed. I paused, looked at the front row, where my 3 sons sat in their expensive suits, watching their mother with pride. Those babies became the men sitting in front of me today, Alexander, William, and Daniel Bennett. You might know them as the Bennett brothers, the founders of Bennett Capital, the billionaires who crashed their father's wedding last year. Laughter now and applause. The story had become famous, the ultimate revenge of the abandoned woman. But I'm not here to talk about revenge. I'm here to talk about something more important. When Raymond left me, I had a choice. I could fall apart. I could give up. I could become the worthless woman he thought I was. Or I could fight. I chose to fight. Fighting meant working 3 jobs. It meant going back to school at 30 with 3 kids at home. It meant never having enough sleep, never having enough money, never having enough time. But I kept going. Because my sons needed me. Because I was the only thing standing between them and a world that didn't care about single mothers or fatherless children. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because I know what you're going through. I know the exhaustion, the fear, the moments when you want to give up. I know it because I lived it, every day, for years. But I also know this. It gets better, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. Every challenge you overcome makes you harder to break. Every sacrifice you make builds something inside you that can't be destroyed. I looked at my sons again. Alex was wiping his eyes. Will had his head bowed. Dan was gripping the armrest like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. My sons are the most remarkable men I know. Not because they're rich, not because they're successful, but because they understand what matters. They know where they came from. They remember the sacrifices that made them possible. And they've dedicated their lives to helping others the way I helped them. Raymond Foster, their father, died last year. He died alone, full of regrets, having wasted his entire life chasing things that didn't matter. He never knew his sons. He never understood what he'd walked away from. That was his choice, his tragedy. But here's the thing about tragedy. It doesn't have to be contagious. Raymond's failures don't have to be your children's failures. What happened to you doesn't determine what happens to them. You have the power to break the cycle, to build something new, to create a legacy that has nothing to do with the people who abandoned you. The applause started slowly and built to a roar. 500 women, standing, cheering, crying. 500 women who saw themselves in my story and found hope in my outcome. I stepped away from the podium. My sons rushed the stage, hugged me all at once, the way they had when they were little, when we shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was the center of their world. "Mom, that was incredible," Dan said. It was just the truth. The truth is incredible sometimes. After the event, we drove home together, the 4 of us in Alex's car. The Rolls-Royce was long gone. I donated it to a charity auction. Too flashy. Too much like something Raymond would have loved. "What happens now?" Will asked. "With the foundation?" "We expand it. More cities, more resources, more women helped." I looked out the window at the passing landscape. Raymond's money is almost gone now. We'll need to raise more. We'll handle that, Alex said. Bennett Capital is already committed, and I have a list of other donors who want to participate. It's strange, Dan mused. His money is doing more good now than it ever did when he was alive. That's often how it works. The dead become more useful than the living. Is that cynical or realistic? We pulled into my driveway. The house was quiet. Evening was falling. Stay for dinner? I asked. Always, they said in unison. We cooked together, the way we had when they were boys and I was teaching them to survive. Pasta and salad and bread from the bakery down the street. Simple food. Real food. After dinner, we sat on the porch. Stars coming out. The same stars that had witnessed everything. I've been thinking, Alex said, about having kids someday, a family. You'd be a good father. You think so? Even with, the genetics. I laughed. You're not Raymond. None of you are Raymond. You're the men I raised you to be. But what if something goes wrong? What if we mess up? Everyone messes up. The question is what you do after. Raymond messed up and ran away. You won't. I know you won't. Alex nodded slowly. Will reached over and squeezed his brother's shoulder. Whatever happens, I said, you face it. Together. That's what we've always done. That's what we'll always do. The night grew late. My sons went home to their own lives, their own futures. I stayed on the porch, alone with my thoughts. 31 years ago, I was 22 and pregnant and abandoned. I thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. I'd built a career, raised 3 sons, survived a man who tried to make me feel worthless, watched my children surpass every limit anyone tried to place on them. And Raymond? Raymond got exactly what he deserved. A life of chasing emptiness, a death of facing nothing, a legacy of being the cautionary tale in someone else's success story. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't love him either. He was just a fact, a thing that had happened, a lesson learned. The triplets he rejected had become the anonymous investors who owned his company, had become his bosses, had become the men who walked up to his altar and whispered truths he couldn't escape. But more than that, more than any revenge, any confrontation, any dramatic moment, they had become my reason for living, my proof that love was stronger than abandonment. That sacrifice created something that selfishness never could. I went inside as the clock struck midnight, closed the door on another day, slept deeply, peacefully, knowing that whatever came next, I could face it. He'd dumped me while pregnant for his mistress. 30 years later, he'd invited me to his wedding to mock my poverty, and I'd stepped out of a Rolls-Royce, followed by 3 billionaires who shared his DNA and none of his failures. But here's the ending that matters. Not because of the money, not because of the revenge, not because Raymond died alone and miserable. I was happy because I had survived, because I had built something, because the woman he'd called worthless had proven to be worth more than he could ever imagine. That was the real victory. That was the only victory that mattered. And every night, watching the stars from my porch, I remembered it.